Hey y'all, welcome to Raw Recovery, the community. My guest today is Mr. Pedro, who reached out to me because he has been able to view the show. He's enjoying the content, the real stories that we're putting out, people giving their real experience so that the next man listening in will possibly be able to benefit, learn, and grow from the things that we're sharing. And my guest, Mr. Pedro, comes today with 21 years of sobriety, clean time, and that is not easy. So we appreciate you, for one, checking out the show, giving us your feedback on it, and being a guest today. So if you would, please introduce yourself and let the people know a little bit about yourself and what you got going on today.
Of course. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Danielle, for inviting me to this wonderful podcast.
Wow.
When I heard about it and I viewed it, a friend of mine, Sharon, shared with me. I tuned in and I said, I wanted to share my experience, strength, and hope on what I've been through and how I got to 21 years because sometimes you say 21 years clean, but people don't understand that it's not the 21 years, it's what you did to get, the journey. So I want to share that with you guys today.
We're ready to hear about it. Thank you for that. So, all right, before we get started, can you give me a vivid memory from your childhood that shaped you today?
A vivid memory from my childhood that shaped me. Well, I want to share this, and not because sometimes we picture someone who's in addiction that comes from a broken home. And I didn't come from a broken home. I had my mother and my father. My mother came from the hills of Puerto Rico. My father came sort of from like the city of Puerto Rico. He came to New York when he was 16 years old. He got himself together and stuff like that and did what he had to do. And then he went and got my mom. And he was able to have a grocery store. So I came, in other words, I want to share that I came from a two-parent home.
Okay.
I didn't come from a broken home. So when I made the decision to go out and made that decision to just do things that got me into addiction, what shaped me was when I was young, and I think what veered me and got me geared toward going into addiction was rejection. And I want to explain that to you, Danielle. I remember I wanted to go across the room. This was like in third grade. I wanted to go across the room and just ask this girl named Jovanka Maitland. My wife knows about her, by the way. I told her. If you're watching out there, babe, I told you about this. No, I don't want no smoke. So I remember wanting to go across and just ask her, can you dance with me? And I had this fear inside of me. And I was like, why do I feel like this? And I never asked her, and I felt guilt and shame. And now I know many people will be like, but that's just a normal thing. But for me, that put a fear inside of me, and I felt almost like I couldn't do that.
Okay.
So then I started drinking, and stealing cigarettes from my father and doing that. When I drank and when I started doing heroin, I would take your socks off without taking your sneakers off.
Oh, it got that deep.
So that is what brought me. That's what sort of shaped me and what geared me toward addiction.
Okay. Yeah. It was that feeling of rejection.
That feeling of rejection.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's deep. Respect. Were there moments in your life that you mentioned that you did come from a good household, but were there moments in your life that you didn't feel protected?
I think I said that I didn't come from a broken home, but there was a moment in time, I think when I was like 13 or 14, where my father, I don't know if he's been stepping out earlier, but I remember, I consider him a friend. I grew up with him. He said, I seen your father come home and he was drunk, and I know what he was with another woman that night. And when that person told me that, it broke my heart. It broke my heart. And I think that moment was where I felt like there was sort of like a separation from my father. My father, Batman wasn't my hero. Superman wasn't my hero. My father was my hero growing up. I seen my father when he came to pick me up from school, and I was like, my eyes and it was just an amazing thing.
Right.
I remember my friend David Daughtry, he would, every time my father would come get me, he was like, is that your father? I said, yeah, that's my pops. And I was proud to say that.
Right.
So
Gotcha.
when that happened, I think that caused some strife and some separation in my heart from him. Yeah.
So would you say that as a teenager, that was something like that wasn't surface that people seen that you were dealing with, and you were kind of suffering like with that on your own?
I was suffering on my own. I like the way we're doing now. I mean, I grew up in a household where, we didn't speak about things. I would get hit, and they would tell me, "You better not cry." You're shutting my emotions down. So I never really spoke about how I felt. I didn't know how. I didn't know who to go to. I had very few people. I think I would share with like one person. I think there was one person that I would share with, I'm going through this, but very few. So very few people knew what I was going through.
That's already tough. And then as a man, having to suppress those emotions even more, you guys were taught to hold it in. Like you said, you were crying and you weren't really comforted during that time. So how have you learned to start expressing yourself now in a healthy way?
Well, ever since coming into recovery and being in recovery, there's a saying that the men say. He said, we want you to cry like a man. I never heard that. So now, voicing in other words, cry like a man means voicing our emotions, being transparent, sharing where I am. Like, I still make mistakes. I got 21 years clean, but if anyone's out there that thinks because you're clean that you have to be perfect, that's totally wrong. I make mistakes on the regular. If you don't believe me, ask my wife.
Word.
So,
I get
so
you.
Yeah.
Has anyone in your family, aside from you, struggled with addiction? Have you watched anyone struggle with anything?
Thank you. Thank you for asking me that question, because on both sides of my family, unfortunately, there's a lineage of addiction. On my father's side and on my mother's side.
Okay.
So yes, I've seen people and stuff like that. In fact, a couple of family members have passed away due to drug addiction.
Would you say that there's any like generational, like substance abuse, like with your mother and father? You didn't witness them, but like, would you say it possibly skip the generation for you? Right.
So there's a saying. So where I come from, we believe that addiction is a disease, right? Yeah. And so I said a disease. Right. I said, okay, cancer. There's the flu. There's these things, right, that are diseases and stuff like that.
Yep.
But when it talks about addiction, like drugs is not the disease. That's what I learned here. That and when I say here in my recovery process. Drugs was like, can I rip this out for here? Can I just do this? There's a gentleman that taught me this. He says, Pedro, this is addiction and this is drugs. So we're left with this addiction, obsession, and compulsion.
Right.
And that's drugs. So drugs was just a little piece. In other words, when I did heroin, when I did cocaine, when I drank, it took me outside of myself. So what I was trying to do was shut off what I was feeling. Now ask me, what do I do today when I'm feeling something?
Okay.
I don't always go to God. I don't always go to recovery.
Right.
Sometimes I'll lean on rage. Sometimes I'll smoke me some anger. Sometimes I'll shoot me some, So those things are still very vivid. So when I don't lean on my recovery aspect, there's other things that I lean on that have nothing to do with drugs, other mental obsessions.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good word. Way to break that down. Thank you so much. That was perfectly said. We had a segment where we broke down addiction as a disease, and like you said, it's no different than cancer, diabetes. It's a disease that people suffer from, but it's not spoke about in the same way as cancer and diabetes. It's definitely shunned upon. So getting the word out there, that's the main reason for the platform, getting the word out there that addiction is a disease that we are we are fighting daily to figure out how we want to, if we can't cure the people, at least put a Band-Aid on it, start working on recovery, right? How did your family handle conflict and stress or any other emotions, would you say? How did you learn to deal with that?
Again, in my house, conflict and stress, like I was, they didn't deal with it well. There was no conflict resolution. I didn't learn that. I learned that in recovery, actually. I learned that in recovery, and I learned that also in my place of worship. So I do two things. I don't separate them. Like, God is God to me everywhere I go. I'm not a Christian in a building, and then when I leave the building, I'm not recovering. In other words, wherever I go, I try to practice my recovery, my spiritual principles. Again, sometimes I don't always do it. But in my house, I didn't see conflict resolution. The way my father would solve conflict resolution was smacking me in my head.
I get you.
So
Yes,
to get a bigger picture of what it looked like in my household, that's what it was. There weren't really, I remember there was one house meeting that he had with us. He says, I want everyone to gather. He brought everyone together and he told us this. He said, hey, let me see your hands. I said, we all went like that, and he says, if I ever catch any of you, this is my father, he said, on welfare, I'll kill you where you stand.
Wow.
That was one of the house meetings. He says, you can go.
Wow.
Your
father was not playing.
He wasn't a game. Yeah. My father was very young.
Well, I mean, he was trying to instill independence in you. I understand that. With that, so can't you say that when you're fighting for your sobriety, some of the things that your father has instilled in you, even though that was a little harsh, don't you think that we still tap into that when we're trying to get sober? Like some of the things that we were taught by our parents, like how to be strong. I know a lot of people tap into their spiritual faith, but I'm saying like the lived experiences that we've had from our families and growing up with them have a way of showing how resilient you can be in any obstacle you're in, including addiction.
So to speak to your point, sometimes I see my father and when I'm driving and I become impatient and my daughter will be like, Daddy, what's going on? And that's my father coming out. My father was a little bit impatient. He was a great worker. And I want to share this too. My father was very compassionate, and he told me he loved me in different ways. My father taught me how to cook. My father taught me how to fish. Shea Stadium was something that was prevalent. When baseball season, we were in Shea Stadium almost every weekend. So that was something that he instilled in us, but he had a rough way of doing things, so that I think that growing up like that, I still think that, and I don't do that to my daughter, but I think that it comes out sometimes when I'm put under duress.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Respect. So as a shift, when would you say you can recall your first time with drugs and alcohol? When was the first time you actually used, and what did that feel? Can you recall that feeling, the sensation you had?
So I remember around 12 years old, I started stealing, I don't know, I'm going to shame my age, these little nips of Miller and Schaefer. I would steal them from my dad. And I would steal cigarettes and I'd be drinking and I got this buzz and I was like, wow, this feels good. But I don't think that took me over the edge. It was the first time I did heroin was when, like, I don't know. It was like there was a spiritual marriage that happened. I thought I found it. I said, now I found what I was looking for. So when I found heroin, it gave me this euphoric feeling. And that's just what it was. It was a euphoric feeling, that I had. And that's when I felt that I crossed the line that I wasn't able to cross back for a very long time.
Pedro, we all have our own reasons why we decided to the first time we tried drugs or alcohol. I know previously in our conversation you were saying that you really don't like the feeling of rejection. And I know some people use drugs or alcohol to feel like they can get through the day, or like they don't feel nervous about certain situations or things of that nature. Like, what would you say led you to actually trying? Like, some people do it for peer pressure, or the first time is at a party. Where were you at? Can you remember your first time trying?
I remember I was on the corner of where my father had the grocery store. I don't know if I mentioned that. I think I mentioned that. So we were on the corner of Douglas Street. I don't know if I could mention that, but, and a gentleman came to me and said, hey, have you ever tried this? And he gave it to me, and I tried it. And when I tried it again, that euphoric feeling, that feeling of courage, that feeling, I don't know, I felt like, I don't know how Superman felt, but that's what I felt.
Yeah.
I felt like almost invulnerable. And I know now that that's just, it's a fallacy, it's fake. But yeah, when I first tried it, usually when people first try heroin, I mean, I threw up and everything, but I still enjoyed it.
Oh,
so
okay,
yeah,
okay.
that was my first time. Yeah, when they offered it to me.
Did it seem harmless at the time? Like when you first used it, I'm sure you didn't imagine some time of addiction. So when you tried it at first, did it just seem like a great euphoric feeling and completely harmless, or did you? But you said you spit up.
Completely
Yeah.
harmless.
Oh wow.
Well, another gentleman that worked in a mechanic store, right, a radiator shop, right next to the store, he gave me a little rock. He says, "This is China White. You said that you want to do heroin." I started doing it. And after 4 days, I said, I got like a little bit of back pain. An old heroin addict, they called them old dope fiends when I'm from, he came and he said, "You know what you got? You got a chippy, my friend.
Oh,
You've been doing
break it
heroin
down
for
for
4
me.
days?"
Right.
In other words, when you do heroin for 3 or 4 days in a row, you become addicted. And what happens is the withdrawal symptoms start. Withdrawal symptoms could be throwing up, runny nose, back pain, and that's what I was feeling. So,
Wow.
yeah.
You were, after 4 days, already experiencing that withdrawal feeling,
The
and it started
withdrawal.
in your back,
yes,
you said?
Yes.
With withdrawal, it gives pain, it gives flu-like symptoms. What's the worst you've ever dealt with it with withdrawal?
Oh man, I'm talking about just all of those things. But when they say you got to get the monkey off your back, I feel like I had King Kong on my back.
Whoa.
Because it was it was very, very overwhelming.
I felt that when you just
Very,
said
very
King Kong
overwhelming.
on your back.
Yes.
Bruh, I felt that. Oof, right. I actually use that expression often. That's exactly how I felt, having the monkey on your back. And it's just like, even when you're trying to even when you're in your sobriety, you still feel like sometimes that monkey is right there.
I want to go back a little bit. Wait a minute, because I think I skipped over something. That was in 1990, but in 1986 or 85, remember when they dropped the crack bomb in New York City?
Yeah.
Well, I was one of the recipients.
Okay.
From 170 pounds, I went down to 110 pounds. And if you're from a Puerto Rican home, when you get hooked on drugs, the solution is to send you to Puerto Rico.
Okay.
So that's where they sent me to. But little did they know that in Puerto Rico, there's more drugs than in New York.
I was literally just thinking that before you finished. I'm like,
Yes.
isn't it easier for you to get access to it?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. But I didn't use over there. I got clean, but when I came back, I still had the obsession and compulsion. I didn't know I had a disease. I thought it was a moral deficiency, or I thought you take the drugs away from me and then I recover from the withdrawals and I'll be okay. But evidently that's not the case.
So at what point did you realize that you had a problem? It's not you just enjoying it just for fun. It's a full-blown addiction problem.
Yeah, and that's a great question because I remember looking in the mirror and I was just like, I looked like a skeleton, but I said, I'm okay. I washed my face, I took a shower, I said, I'm all right. I changed my clothes, I said, I'm okay. And people were like, bro, you are disappearing. But I didn't realize it. So when you say, when did I realize it? Wow. I think when the obsession and compulsion was lifted, and I'm talking about years, I mean, I started in 85, I'm talking about 2004 was when I sat on my bed. I had relapsed again. I had like about 18 months clean, no recovery though. And when I say no recovery, I mean I was abstinent. I didn't have a program. I didn't have Narcotics Anonymous, which I am in now. I don't know if I could say that, but I want to say that's what I use to help me,
definitely.
right? I didn't have that, but then in 2004, I was just sitting on my bed and I wasn't on this crazy run. I just relapsed. 2 days I was using, but I felt a spiritual bankruptcy in my heart. And I looked in the mirror and I knew where I was going to go if I continued. And then, I don't know, it wasn't that God spoke to me with an audible voice, but in my heart.
Okay.
He said, Pedro, is this what we're going to do for the rest of your life? And I felt like I like you know the cartoons when they raise the white flag? That's what I did.
Respect.
And I felt that something happened to me that day. The obsession and the compulsion to use drugs was lifted. And I felt it. I said, oh my gosh, I'm not going to use no more. I felt that, but I needed to do some things and take some steps so that I could continue that, so I could have grabbed onto that feeling. They call it a moment of clarity. That's what I had.
Okay,
Yeah.
respect. You were saying that people were mentioning, hey, bro, you're disappearing. Like, we can see something's going on. Were you trying to hide it, though?
Yeah,
Especially
I
at the
had two
beginning.
pairs of pants on. You know that whole thing because I was smoking. I was smoked out, but I was smoking crack with weed. So I was like, I ain't smoking out no pipe, boy. You you disappearing on us. So yeah, that was my first moment of denial. In other words, everyone's seen it but me.
Got
Yeah.
you. How did your addiction affect relationships?
Oh man. I mean, everyone. I remember playing basketball in Douglas Park, and Douglas Park there's Douglas and DeGraw, and I remember we used to play basketball when we were younger and stuff like that, and even when I was older. And then I found myself in Douglas Park with the hookers and the pimps and the drug addicts, pushing me. I was one of them, and I was like. And my friends, they would be like, Pedro, what's the Pete? They didn't call me Pedro, they called me Pete. They said, Petey, what's going on, man? And eventually they just, they see me walking on this side, they cross the street.
Understood.
So it was that bad. Yeah.
But look at you now.
Yeah.
Look at you now, brother.
Thank God. By the grace of God, there we go.
21 years sober. This isn't your first time trying to get sober. How many attempts do you think you took to try to get sober? How many times did you try?
In 1994, I was taken to a mountain, and this was just like a religious place. They didn't deal with the disease of addiction. So, again, I know people, you mentioned to me, you said, Pedro, there's a vast array of ways to recover. But for me, I needed a 12-step program.
Okay, respect.
I needed to be broken down to me. You know what I mean? So in 94, I got clean for about 18 months, and then, I relapsed again. But I didn't relapse because I never had a foundation.
Okay.
I never understood what was going on with me. I never understood that guilt and shame could take me right back out there. So from 94 to 2004, that 10 years, I was doing a cha-cha. Brief periods of clean time and then using again. Brief periods of clean time and then using again until 2004, where the obsession and compulsion was lifted, and I was then introduced to this program called Narcotics Anonymous. Yeah.
I love the fact that you said you were doing the cha-cha, was back and forth. You know why that's important to be said? Because also on this platform, we stress that relapse is a part of recovery, right? The person who's never dealt with addiction doesn't understand why a person would relapse, especially with a significant amount of clean time. Not often, but you've heard before people with 20 plus years that can still relapse. And I think having that information on the forefront, especially a person like me who's with 5 years in the bank, we're not out of the clear. Right? We got to work on this every single day. 20, 30, 40 plus years, we have to continue to make sure that we're tapping in so that we don't lose sight, because we're never good. It's never, you got this, right? So I appreciate you saying that, because we're going to stress that on several different episodes and as much as we can, that addiction is a disease and relapse is a part of recovery until we get it, until we are able to stay sober. And we're only able to do that a day at a time. Pedro, what would you say was your lowest and scariest moment in your addiction?
So I remember, this last time in 2004, I wasn't In other words, I wasn't using that I was so skinny and stuff like that. Like I just used for a couple of days, and the spiritual bankruptcy, I might as well have been out there for 20 years. But when I was in Puerto Rico, it was bad. It was bad. I was like, I never had shot heroin mainlined until I went to Puerto Rico. And when I was in Puerto Rico, I was doing that. I was shooting heroin. I was shooting cocaine. I was smoking cocaine. I was smoking crack. I was doing everything. I was taking pills. So that was my lowest moment. And so it was a town where my father was there as well. So, and if you're Puerto Rican, or you don't have to be Puerto Rican, this has nothing to do with ethnicity. What it has to do with is your father's name is attached to you. So every time they see me in the drug spot or nodding out, they would say, "There go Gustavo's son." That's my father's name. And so that brought shame to my family. You know? Yeah. So that was my lowest moment.
Definitely understand.
And I know that in the last episode we were speaking from the other side of this, from the child side. So my son, he's seen me in my addiction. You know?
You're referring to the episode we had with our one guest, Tanea, who was able to explain what life is like as the child watching your parents suffer from an addiction. I was just giving it for context for the people viewing.
Right. So I had that experience. I have my son. My son, he's going to be 34 on December 10th.
Okay.
And he loves me. We've since then we've made amends. You know, because of, and I believe this, because of my addiction and because of my lack of guidance and being a father, because while he was growing up, I was using. And so that was another guilt and shame that I felt. And so when I had about 7 years clean, he was already, you know, he wasn't using drugs, but he was living a lifestyle that in turn got him 14 years up in upstate. Yeah. And he did 14 years. You know, and there was a part of me that felt responsible for him being there. But I had people in my life and said, "Pedro, you used to use before, but you had 7 years clean and you were giving him the guidance, you know, and you was in recovery. You was a father to him for those 7 years. He made that decision." You know, so it was but there was still that guilt and shame because I can't get that time back.
Right.
That's what hurts.
Right.
But I could only do what I can do, what I'm responsible for now. Excuse me.
Okay.
You know? Yeah.
Was there a specific turning point in your life that made you want to get sober? I mean, we when you're in your addiction, you want to get sober, but for some reason we just haven't tapped into that specific moment that gets us over the finish line.
I seen the young lady's episode. What's her name?
Tanea.
Tanea. So Tanea said, she mentioned, you know how many Taneas I had in my life say, "Pedro, you need to get clean." Thousands. Thousands of people will come to me, "Pedro, you need to get clean." And you know what? My mother passed away in 1990. And you know what I did the next week? I used drugs. That's how powerful it was. That not even my mother's death could help me. It was the obsession and the compulsion. The only one who helped me to stop using was God lifting the obsession. But I had to surrender to him for him to do that. Yeah, so.
Was there a situation, when you surrendered, was it a situation, something happening that made you surrender that specific day?
So I look back at that time. It's funny that you asked that. So I look at what was happening back then. So my sister was living with her then husband. You know, she was living in an apartment. I was with my cousin. My cousin was using, and I was hanging around with them. And I began, and I wasn't using yet, but I knew that I was going to use because I was around them. They tell me in recovery now to stay away from people, places, and things.
Top.
So I seen what was happening to me. And when I came from Puerto Rico, I already had I had about 18 months clean, and then I relapsed. So I was already feeling guilt and shame. I didn't want to get up. They would have to wake me up at 11 o'clock. They opened the shades. They'd be like, you got to get up. You can't. I was feeling depressed because of what had happened to me, having clean time and then losing it, you know, so I felt depressed. And so I was in that state of depression. And then when I did finally put that drug in my body, God showed up. God showed up. I was at which word can I use? I was at a precipice in my life, at a crossroad, where in that fork I met God. And God told me, what do you want to do? I'll help you, but only if you want me to. And he raised his hands like that, symbolically, right? And I said, yes, I want you to help me. And I turned my life over to him at that moment.
Well, we know that the Most High, he uses people to help other people, puts us in situations to better us. With the Most High on your side, what tools, what programs, like you mentioned NA, you said you did do rehab? Like what?
Yeah. So when I felt that obsession was lifted, so those were the things I had to do. I went to detox to get totally clean 7 days, and then I went into a 28-day rehab. After the 28-day rehab, I went to this place that's called a 3-quarter house. So where I stood maybe like 7 months, I completed this outpatient program, and then I was waiting. This is how I got my culinary. I was waiting for, it was called Vesit back then. Now it's called something else, but it's the same thing. I think EPRA or something like that. But I was waiting for them to give me a grant so then I could go to school, to culinary school. So what I did was these people at my church, I stood there for 14 months and they also helped me. And they encouraged me to go to these 12-step meetings. They said, wait a minute, you can stay here, but you have to continue your recovery and we'll help you with the spiritual stuff, you know, as well. So that's how I weaved my way. That's how God used his, used his way on me. Yeah.
All right. I love that. That was a phenomenal story, hearing other people assisting you. That's why we also say on this platform, people need people. Cannot do it alone. And the courage that it takes to ask for help. Suffering in silence isn't going to get you where you need to be. But taking the next step to actually be courageous and say, I can't do this shit by myself. I need someone to help me.
You know, Danielle, I remember one time I was in the outpatient and my hands started sweating. My heart was beating. I remember those symptoms. You know what I wanted to do? I wanted to use. But I raised my hand. I said, hey guys, my hands are sweaty. My heart's beating really fast. And these are my triggers that I have $75 in my pocket and I want to go use drugs. So a gentleman from my 3-quarter house said, his name was Omar. I love him. He took me to a thrift store. He said, Pedro, we're going to go spend that money at the thrift store. I bought a pair of Florsheim shoes that cost $1,000 for $3.
Nice.
I bought myself a whole wardrobe. And you know what happened? And you know what happened? The feeling passed. There's a saying in the 12-step program, right? That it says, this too shall pass. So those feelings, they don't come anymore. But in the beginning, they used to come. And when I feel my hands sweaty and my heart beating, that means that, you know, that was the telltale sign. So I was able to recognize that, but then I was able to tell on myself. And that was what helped me. Yeah.
Perfect. I love that. That was a very good story about how people can tap into these resources. You're not by yourself.
Yes.
A person like me, I say it all the time, if you got my number, call me. I don't want no one suffering alone. I wouldn't wish addiction on my worst enemy. So,
you know what I used to think? I don't know if and I'm sharing with you, I don't know if you, but I thought when I got that feeling, you know what I used to think? I have to use. There's no other way. And that's such a fallacy. You can stop it, but not on your own, with other people, sharing it, calling someone, saying, hey, I don't feel good. Can we talk for a little while? You know, and so things like that,
Right. You know these things now, which has helped you get to 21 years of sobriety. Tell us about what it was like in the early days of sobriety, how was, because it's not easy getting sober. So what were those early days like for you, Pedro?
So the early days of sobriety, I'm going to tell you, the early days of my clean time in the beginning, I was sneaking out of the church. I was going to have sex with women. I'm telling you, I'm keeping it. You said this is raw recovery, right?
Brother.
So I'm going to tell you the truth.
Go.
Listen, I was doing all that. This is before I met my wife, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's make that very
what was happening, make that crystal clear.
Word.
So what was happening to me was I was having these feelings and I didn't know how to go to God with them. And so I filled the void with sex. I filled the void with other things, with food, overspending. So now, as I'm staying clean and as the years pass, I have a sponsor. My sponsor told me, listen, there's things that are going to happen. You're going to find out how to do the things you used to do using, but clean.
Yeah.
And when he told me that, I said, wait a minute. So that's what I need to address, the obsession and compulsion. And it comes in various ways. It doesn't have to be with drugs. I'll buy myself 20 pairs of shoes. I don't need 20 pairs of shoes.
Word. I hear you.
I don't need to spend. I don't need to run that credit card up to $3,000. Why?
Yeah.
Because I feel.
Yeah.
So it's those things. So that's what recovery is about, though. It's about learning how to address the obsession and the compulsion.
Okay. Yeah. What keeps you sober on a difficult day?
On a difficult day,
do you have any routines and habits?
I try to make strong attempts to pray and meditate. But this is what happens to me when I don't do that. When I don't do that, the day doesn't go well. But this is what they've taught me in recovery and in the program. You could start your day over. Like I could be having a bad day and I'd be like, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to just say a prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Wow.
Or, take my will, take my life, guide me in my recovery, show me how to live. Simple prayers like that. And I say other prayers that I speak to my higher power because I try to have a relationship with him. Right. But he knows me. And he knows Pedro's a knucklehead. But he wants me to lean on him. And if I can't lean on him, I'll call Danielle. Danielle, I'm having a terrible day.
Call me, brother. I'm so serious.
You know what I mean? And so that's how,
right.
That's how we can get over these things and get through. I called 4 people today. I'm terrible with the phone, by the way. I'm terrible with the phone. But I said, you know what? Let me call this. I called 3 people. And I said, I just want to reach out to you. And one of the person says, Pedro, you know what? I woke up today and you know what the word came to my mind? Gratitude. Being grateful. Where I come from, it says grateful addicts, recovering addicts, don't use.
Respect, brother. Oh my gosh.
So when we have gratitude, like you displayed that here, you have gratitude. You're grateful for this. Beyond grateful.
I can't say it enough. I want to touch on the fact that it's so good to hear another person in recovery saying, call me, I'll answer. Because I remember when I was, one of the many times that I tried to get sober, I went to an AA meeting, and what we would do is they let you write the numbers down on the books.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. So pass them around. Yeah.
And
great.
I thought, I used to be scared to call and stuff like that, but
dial them, don't file them.
What? Yeah. Right. What do you say? Dial them, don't file them. I like, don't tuck them away. Use those numbers, and you got some people that are literally just sit on the phone for hours. Like some people when they're first getting sober from alcohol, and I'm just gonna give some of the symptoms that you're having when you're first getting sober from alcohol specifically. You just feel real scared. Like you feel like you don't want to be alone. You just feel anxious, like every noise kind of scares you. But to have someone pick up that phone, no judgment, just listening, even if you're not making sense, that's why I can't always answer the phone, but my God, I would, for the person suffering, I'm gonna do my damn hardest. You know what I mean? Because you cannot do this alone, and you shouldn't have to feel like that you have to be fighting this battle by yourself, brother. You feel me?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah, man. We're going to share these hard-hitting stories. We're going to keep it raw on Raw Recovery, because the people listening in have already heard the watered-down, sugar-coated
Yeah.
They need to hear the Pedro story.
Ain't no sugar here.
No, right now. It ain't good for you here. Sugar causes diabetes, another illness we fighting. So, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Where are you at today, Pedro? Tell us about you. You mentioned culinary school. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I went to culinary school, and I got a job at this very, very awesome shelter, and I worked there for 15 years. I do service at my church. I love, we serve the homeless. And it's just, when I got clean and when I went to culinary school, I'll tell you a story. I was doing my internship at this 2-star French bistro, Daniel Bouloud.
Ooh, yeah.
You look him up and you'll see, he's a very, very well-known French chef. But I seen what was happening after work. There were Coronas, there were Dos Equis, and those beers were coming out, and I didn't want to be around that. So I wanted to get a job where I can use my cooking skills, but also help people, people that are less fortunate. And so that's why I geared myself toward the Bowery, the New York City Rescue Mission, and my church, the Next Step Community Church.
Nice.
Yeah. Keep
Keep doing all of the things. Keep on working and giving back to the community, because I feel like that also keeps us sober, right? For me personally, I love to see a person in recovery, and I don't like to see anyone still in their addiction. I say that to say it's important to see both sides, because it's a reminder of everything I can lose. I don't want to go backwards. We've come too far. So seeing the person still suffering, wanting to help them, I think it's a balance to keep us sober.
Danielle, I don't like giving people money, but I remember when I needed $1.
Okay.
No. When I needed $1 and someone gave it to me. And of course I went and used, but they didn't give it to me so I could use. They gave it to me in good faith. So when I see someone, I use my discernment. I still don't like doing that, but I use my discernment, and I be like, here.
That is so
and
profound.
I did that the other day, so yeah.
That was so, you just really gave me, I don't know, you just fired me up saying that, because I know what you're saying. Like, I don't want to help you hurt yourself, but I definitely can relate to needing that. I've been without a penny in my pocket or in my account. Yeah, I'm going to look out for the next man, for sure.
You know what I want to share with you? You know when God showed up for me? When I was in the shooting gallery. In the shooting gallery.
Oh, wow.
That's when God showed up for me. He didn't allow me to die. When I was going to cop, putting my money in a bucket. Faith, putting my money in a bucket is going up a thing, and they sending something back down. And I used it. I got faith that person is giving me the right thing.
Right.
Come on, man.
Putting your faith in that, for sure. If
In the
you're
wrong
willing
thing,
to try
but
that, just try God. Like, right? I feel
right.
that.
Yeah.
I feel you.
So I've always had faith, and God always showed up for me, and I know that today, in the muck and the mire, He showed up to me first. I didn't know. I said, God's not here. Yes, He is. Yes, He is.
Your recovery is your own personal journey. And we definitely stress that on the show. Everyone's recovery is different.
Yeah.
If you're tapping into your higher power, if you're going to NA, if you're going to rehab, whatever works for you, do it. Find your support. What do you want to tell the people who are listening in, who you shared where you come from, the phenomenal things that you're going into and pursuing? And before we leave, please, I want you to share about your book that you were telling me about previously.
Yes. So
definitely.
I had the pleasure of writing this book. It's called The Pastor's Chef, an ambassador for those in need. So when I did this interview with Rachel Ray, you're a great interviewer, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So she asked me, she says, so Pedro, what did these 10 years brought? Because this is when I had 10 years clean. And I said, I told her a story. I said, God took me from here, from the muck and the mire. He cleaned me up. He transformed me. And now He's made me to an ambassador to those in need. And that's what I want to be for the rest of my life. So that's what I want to do. And that's what this is. And if there's anybody out there listening to this, if you listen to this podcast, listen, it doesn't matter where it is. Like you just shared it. You just need to find something. There needs to be some type of foundation. Tell God to guide you or surrender first. There has to be a surrender. That's how it happened for me. It wasn't something magical that I did. It wasn't some religious hoops that I jumped through. It was just I allowed God to show up for me, and He did the rest.
You said it's not something magical. I remember going to the AA meetings and just wanting to tap into whatever it is that those sober people had.
Right.
And, just keep coming back, man. That's what they kept on telling me. Keep coming back. And today, you're sitting here with 21 years of sobriety. I just crossed into 5 years, and it's because we keep on coming back, right? So, yes. Pedro, I thank you so much. And we appreciate anyone who was able to tune in, and we will be back again soon with Raw Recovery, the community. Peace.